Hey, let's look at our In the Cubicle feature. It is an exciting feature where we just try to figure out how we navigate the challenges of the workplace, but also how we can take on the opportunities as well. One of the opportunities to work in many economies today is to actually have the ability to work in an industry where you have to multitask and do multiple things in one go, right? And that probably is a given because when you look at your responsibilities, you have to do that, right? Because you have to pay your bills. If you stick to one job, maybe things won't come together for you. So you have to try to navigate different side hustles, moonlighting, portfolio works. The dynamics of managing multiple jobs can be rewarding, but also exhausting. They can be empowering, but at times they can be overwhelming. How do you deal with that? Is it a badge of honor or is it a sign of burnout? Sipho Mabaso is joining us there in our live stream. Remember, we are on our YouTube page at Channel Africa 1. We see the subscription is growing there. Join that and you can check out the conversation that we have live in the show. So Sipho is joining us live from his office. Sipho Mabaso is an HR specialist. I see you there, Sipho. How are you doing, mate?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you, Ben?
I'm super good. Look, in today's economy, things are the way that they are. And for many people, they can't do without not doing multiple jobs. It is the landscape that we're in right now in many different industries, isn't it?
It definitely is. And to your point, that's what drives a lot of people to consider the idea of another stream of income because we trying to make ends meet, right? Trying to stretch out our salaries. Inflation is going up more than what our salaries are. So in trying to navigate that balance, you find yourself considering other options.
And in that, I mean, when you think of doing that, what would you say to someone who's making that consideration? What must they actually look at? Number one, I think some people do it in the wrong industries. I think at times if you have a physical 9 to 5 to be in the office there and you're trying to do something else while you're trying to navigate that, and then you never spend time with your family, and then you get burnout because you're trying to do two things in one go, it's a recipe for disaster. Most of the people, I think, they don't really investigate the type of industry they're in and the type of work that they currently do.
Agreed. And I think the best place to start, I find a lot of people thinking, I just want to make extra cash. And then they start navigating through things they've never thought of, things that they've never been involved in. And I always say, if you've got a 9 to 5, your side hustle needs to be linked with something that you already know, something that you already love, so that when you are working after your 9 to 5, it's a drive for passion and not necessarily for survival. Case in point, I know somebody who's a chartered accountant. They did their studies, started working, and of course, they started getting bored. And for them, it was not an issue of survival per se. But as we speak, this person is now an interior designer.
Wow.
And what they started doing is that while they were doing their 9 to 5, after work, they started playing around with the idea of what they love, which is decorating spaces. And because this is a labor of passion, it makes it quite easy for you to balance the two. Whereas if you were trying to now start coding when you know very well that you don't even like technology, but then it's a recipe for disaster because now you must learn something completely new. It does not negate that the other forms of side hustles won't necessarily require you to put in the efforts, but rather start with something that you already know. If you love baking, think around how you can monetize baking. If you love talking, we've seen people going into the podcasting space. We've seen people going into the content creation space as a side hustle. So it's not necessarily something completely new. You're now just navigating the idea of how do I go about monetizing something that I already know and love.
Well, Sipho, once you do find that particular thing that you'd like to monetize and you do know it and you do love it, there's still a very big difference from beginning out and maybe doing just one gig here, one gig there, along with your 9 to 5, or maybe even quitting your 9 to 5 and just doing that. But when things start piling up and you're getting more and more work, obviously that's a point of being excited. But how do you know when to stop? I mean, money is addictive, just like sugar and drugs, right? Once you start seeing the money coming in, you could end up having like a 24-hour work cycle because you can't say no to a gig.
Oh, and that's a packed question. And I think one needs to find a balance, right? So usually when people start out with side hustles, it can either be just that, a percentage of your total income. But the moment it starts surpassing your primary job, then you need to think around what needs to be gone off, right? Because you can't do both. At some point, you need to sleep. At some point, you need to think around your relationships, be it your family, be it your spouse and or partner. Because if you don't create that balance, then one part of your life is definitely going to suffer. And if you don't do that intentionally, then something is going to break. Either you will break from fatigue or relationships are going to suffer. And of course, you can't say, but babe, I'm trying to make means for us. But it doesn't help if you're bringing in the money, but you're never at home.
Mm.
So I think it's creating that structure, making sure that you know what that balance looks like, and learning to delegate where you need to. Um, I don't know if you guys ever experienced this, but I've always noticed back in high school that the people that made it to head boys and head girls,
Hmm.
they were playing sports, they were good at academics, and they made it as leaders as well.
Mm.
And if you speak to any of them around things that they learned back then, it's around creating structure. So while everybody is scrolling through TikTok for hours, they are not doing that. They know they need to study because tomorrow they've got sports, because tomorrow, the next day they've got something else. So it's just around how you go about creating structure in your life so that you fit in what needs to fit in, including rest, because you definitely need to rest. Otherwise, your body will make that decision for you.
Yeah, I mean, research is probably the place to start, right? Um, how do you navigate that? Because now, look, okay, I've got these bills and I need to make a plan, right? And then you start this thing and it kind of takes over your life. I love the example that you used that this guy was a guy who was dealing with the numbers in the office, and after work they would deal with their creative side and do interior designing. But there was a point as things started taking over, you kind of like, I need to let go of one here and one must actually start dominating. Look, how do you research all these things? Because some of them are just you go by intuition. Some of them are things that you don't do because of passion. Others are things that you probably are a professional in. It's not an easy thing to navigate. And that's what I'm trying to figure out. Where do you start doing your research on when to start and when to stop?
So I think from a research point of view, right from the beginning, that's where you'll start asking questions. That's where you'll need to start finding out how other people have navigated the same industries, right? So I would not say jump before you even know how you are going to monetize this thing. So yes, you
Hmm.
love baking, but you need to start thinking around how do I monetize this element?
Sure.
And that's where you start doing your research. To your point, it starts off small. So it's easy to navigate. Now you realize this is how much money it's bringing through. But for you to scale up, I think the importance of relationships becomes quite important. So it's how do you go about building relationships? How do you go about networking with the right people? Be it you're a township entrepreneur,
Sure.
be it you're a 9 to 5 person, it's starting to build networks that can help you figure out some of these questions because they will differ at different stages of your side hustle journey. Um, with some people, depending on what industry you're in, things might turn in 1 year. Case in point, podcasting.
Hmm.
How you get YouTube to pay you more. Hey, you might need to ask somebody that's already doing it. And the first person that you meet might not give you all that information.
Sure.
But again, it just means continue building those networks so that you at least lean on people that have already walked ahead of you.
All right, Sipho, we're going to speak more on this one. We're speaking to Sipho Mabaso, HR specialist, joining us for this conversation. Are you doing more than one thing for a job? Do you find that you've kind of found a strategy around it, or are you overwhelmed? Let us know on our WhatsApp number, +2763 406 9126. You can text us or voice note us there.
África. Conhece o Ntivani?
Claro que sou eu.
Ntivani é o amante da música de corpo e alma.
Eu amo música africana.
Ele aprecia todos os tipos de melodias e passa os seus dias a ouvir a Channel África. Adivinha só, a Channel África quer ajudar o Ntivani e os amantes da música em todo o lado a descobrir ainda mais música incrível. Por isso, a Channel África está a convocar artistas africanos a submeterem as suas músicas. Músicos, lembrem-se de nos dar todas as informações relevantes no music@channelafrica.co.za. As submissões são a vossa oportunidade de ser ouvidos, mas não garantem inclusão na lista. Todas as submissões serão cuidadosamente analisadas para verificar se cumprem os requisitos da nossa estação. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
On the Move, weekdays, 9 a.m. to midday. Only on Channel Africa. #On the Move.
We're chatting about the dynamics of managing multiple jobs, whether you want to call it a side hustle, freelancing, moonlighting, portfolio work, it doesn't matter. What does it take for you to stay sane while still navigating this particular pressure? Sipho Mabaso continues to join us on this conversation. Sipho is an HR specialist. Sipho, you know, many of us are trying to look into this and many of us are already in the middle of this hustle culture, but we're also trying to see how we can balance, right? Because life is a balancing act, as you said earlier on. So what are some of the important lessons that we need to learn when taking on this hustle culture?
I think the first thing is to ask yourself why you're doing it. Because if it is about the money, and I think to what Ben highlighted earlier, it's easy for one to allow money coming in to run away with your life. But if you're doing it because it's something that you love, because you're not necessarily happy with the one job, then it helps you navigate how you're going to structure your life. You need to think around at what point is it enough, right? Are you doing it so you move out of your small township so that you go to the big city? Because if you don't understand your why, then this thing can just run away with your life. But if you understand the why, then you are able to create those barriers and create those boundaries around this is up to, I'm going to work hard up to this point.
Yeah.
I'm working hard because I want to buy a house. I'm working hard because I want to upgrade my car, or I
Sipho,
want a better lifestyle.
you know us as humans, right? It's never gonna be enough. You start there, right? I'm doing this because I want to buy a car, and then you buy the car. It's like, oh, this is so amazing. Now I want a house, and then you buy the house, but I want a bigger house. I want more clothes. I'd like to pop champagne. You're always going to want more. But when you do start getting more and more of those gigs, right, and you're seeing your goals being met one at a time, is it important to sort of, step back and look at, okay, is this for money, or do I still understand the core of who I am and how I feel? Also just trying to navigate that space where you could be burnt out, but you just continue to chase money. Okay, you said we need to place a goal there. How do you do that? How do you try and step back if you are feeling a little burnt out without, even when the money, continues to come in, and how do you stop yourself and say, okay, for now, this is enough?
I think, yeah, you raise a valid point. So it should not just be about material goals, but it should be about the quality of life that one wants as well, right? So if you are, and I'll speak of this from a man's point of view, you're doing this so that you are solid and financially independent, so that you can have a wife, right? Once you've got the wife, it's the idea is, what kind of family environment do I want? Because if the side hustle is going to take away from that, then we need to pause and monitor. If it's going to get me to New York, get me to drive that expensive car, but I'm constantly tired, then I need to pause and think around what quality of life do I want for myself. And it's those uh, it's those breaks and those pauses in life that we then need, right? So before you break, before you get exhausted, just continuously asking yourself, why am I doing this? And is it still in line with the kind of life that I want for myself? Because yes, if it brings in the money, but all the relationships are gone, then we've missed the point, right? Because then you are a 50-year-old millionaire who's also lonely. You're rich, you're wealthy, but you're also lonely. But what quality of life do you want for yourself? And is the side hustle serving that purpose? And that's the one question that one must ask themselves periodically. It's not a once-off conversation with oneself, but it's an ongoing conversation. What quality of life do you want for yourself?
And also, curate the experience for yourself. I mean, I'm a freelancer myself, and most of the time I have to think about, okay, what am I doing with this experience and how am I going to navigate the challenges of being a freelancer, right? I think at times you have to think about, okay, that means I have to save money, right? And the money that I save is going to give me a period of rest here and there, and then maybe in another situation you have a gig that lasts you a short period of time. Then you have to think about, okay, I'm not going to spend this money, I'm actually going to invest this money into something different. And so I think people at times think that it's all about spending, when at times it also allows you to create a space where you can find things that you can actually do that will allow you to rest at a particular point.
And I think that's very key. And maybe to add on to what Palesa was talking about, it's the idea that what you're talking about, Ben, also gives you a sense of freedom. If you think about freelancing, if you are not saving, then you are going to jump for the first gig that comes up. But if you've been saving and you know the quality of life, not every gig that comes through should have your name on it, right? So you should be able to say, actually, that's not who I am. We just recently saw what influencers getting into trouble because of this Russia issue.
Sure.
But because it's bringing in the money, people were quick to jump, even if it's not necessarily something that's aligned to your principles. But if you navigate your life and if you know why you are doing something, then it gives you a sense of freedom as well, where you know that you're not necessarily doing things out of desperation.
Yeah, because
you may have started out of desperation, but you want to place yourself at a point where you've got options.
Yeah, because getting that extra gig is a great opportunity, right? I know we've presented it as kind of a burden, but it also gives you a lot of opportunity to, number one, expand your skills, but also to actually monetize things in a different way than you would have without that particular gig.
Agreed. And I think we saw a case in point is with COVID, and God forbid it happens again.
Oh, no, please.
But the topic around skills and being skilled in different areas became quite critical, right? So if you had one stream of income, if that was not to work out during that time, you would have needed another skill that you could utilize during that time. And I think that also then becomes very important, that you're not dependent on a company that employs you, because especially if you work for a private organization, next year, 2 years from now, they could close down, and the question would be where to from then.
Yeah.
So the idea around gathering all these skills becomes quite important.
All right, Sipho, we'll need to leave it there. This is a very important conversation because, hey, the economy is putting pressure on us. The economy has its foot on our necks, and we really are trying our best to find ways to make money. But also, there's also a culture now of, hobbies, people trying to expand themselves. So bringing those two together, making money, but also expanding yourself and expanding the things that you want to do seems good. But of course, you need to bring in that mindset of being discerning when enough is enough. We appreciate your input on this conversation.
And thank you very much. It's been a good one.
That's HR specialist Sipho Mabaso. So do you know when